Hi, class. I want to talk with you about your book report. I'm sorry that I am not there today, but this is the next best thing. We can talk over video about how to complete your book report essay. So, your job over the last couple months was to read a book and then watch the movie that went along with the book, right? And I gave you that purple paper to talk about the things, or to write down so you can keep track of the things that were the same between the book and the movie, and the things that were different between the book and the movie. So we're going to write an essay today during your writing time, and I think that you can do this all today. So your goal is to finish today. You're going to write 4 paragraphs, but they don't need to be very long. They just need to have 4 different paragraphs. Now, some people are going to say, well, I was able to put all the information in 1 paragraph. That won't be the right format, and so your grade won't be as good. I want you to make sure that you have 4 separate paragraphs, right? Let's go through what that will look like. Walk with me. I'll just write it on the board, and I think that will work okay. We'll erase our stuff from today. Thank you for your patience. Okay. I'm going to put this on Cambry's desk. Okay, so when we are doing our writing, we're going to make 4 paragraphs, right? So let me write this down. Paragraph number 1 is an introduction. You're going to be telling the reader about your essay. You're going to tell them that recently, this could be an example, right? You don't need to copy this, but it's an example. Recently, I read The Witches by Roald Dahl, and I also watched the movie, The Witches. That would be a great starter. You could also mention that we want to tell what our next paragraphs are going to be about, right? We've got paragraphs 2 and 3. Our last paragraph, of course, is going to be the conclusion, so we don't need to mention that. But in the introduction, we also need to tell the reader what they're going to see in the body of our essay, or the rest of it. So in the introduction, we would also say, I'm going to tell you some of the things that were the same between the book and the movie, and some things that were different in the book and the movie. And that's all you need to put in your introduction. So first you start by saying, I read, and then you say the book that you read, and I also watched the movie, right? Then you say, there were many things that were the same between the book and the movie, and there were also some things that were different between the book and the movie. That's all you need to do for the introduction. Then, in the next paragraph, paragraph 2, you're going to compare, which is to say the things that are the same. Now, I can't tell you what to write in that part because that's up to you, and it kind of depends on the book that you read and the movie that you watched. So you have to say those things that were the same. I would pick, if there's a lot that's the same, I would pick the 3 most important things, okay? Like the characters, or the setting, or the plot of the story. The problem in the story. Is it the same between the book and the movie? Then those are the things that I would mention. Okay, those are the 3 biggest things. So if you're struggling with what, or if there's too many, pick the 3 biggest ones. Okay. Your next paragraph is going to be the contrast, right? The contrast are the things that are different, the differences. So in that portion, you are going to tell the reader what was different between the book and the movie. Maybe the movie left out some things that were in the book. So you want to mention those things. Maybe something was changed between the book and the movie. Maybe some characters are different. Maybe they took out some characters. Maybe the setting's a little bit different. So you've got to decide and you've got to list it. Now, if there is just one difference, then just list the one. If there's more than three, then again, just pick the three most important things. Okay? And then, of course, the last paragraph will be our conclusion. In the conclusion, you restate what you said in the introduction. Restate means you say it again, just in a little bit different words. So when in our introduction, if we said, I read The Witches by Roald Dahl and I also watched the movie, there were some things that were the same and there were some things that were different. Well, that's basically what we're going to say in the conclusion as well. We say almost the same thing, we just use a little bit different words. So you could say something like, I really enjoyed reading the book The Witches and watching the movie. And even though there were a few differences, everything still made sense and I really loved, I got to think about this some more. I should have had it written out, right? You can think on yours better. Even though there were a few differences between the book and the movie, it was still pretty close to the same, pretty accurate, and it was very interesting or fun or entertaining to watch after I read the book. Does that sound pretty reasonable? It's only 1 to 2 sentences, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be long, but it does have to wrap up, and you do have to have a conclusion. That makes up our 4 paragraphs in our essay. You can do this. I know you can. So your Google Doc, what you need to type out is in Google Classroom. It says book report number 1. You will click on it. It opens up to a blank document, and you will start typing your essay. Now, you can use some scratch paper if you'd like to do a rough draft. You actually use your notebook that is partly for language arts, and you could write out in there with a pencil first if you'd like to. That would be just fine. A rough draft is always a good idea. The other thing that I want to remind you of is when we start a new paragraph, we indent, right? We press tab or we press the space bar 5 times to start a new paragraph. So if we're writing along, this is our first line, we make sure that we go over 5 spaces before we start writing. And then the other parts of our paragraph will go all the way to the left-hand side the way that they're supposed to. But the first sentence, the first word that we start in a paragraph needs to be indented 5 spaces, or you can press the tab button. If you have questions about this, you can for sure ask Mrs. Checketts. She would be happy to help you, and she knows a lot about this. So go ahead and ask her if you need to. Also, if you get a red line underneath a word, it means that you spelled it wrong. That's okay. You can hover over that word and right-click with your little mouse pad, and it should give you some options for how to spell that word correctly. If you're still struggling, you could ask a neighbor quietly. You could ask Mrs. Checketts. Okay? If something's underlined in blue, that means that the grammar's not correct in your sentence. It means that the words that you've used aren't quite making sense. So again, you could talk to a neighbor, or you could ask Mrs. Checketts how you need to rearrange those words. Okay? But when you do turn it in, I would like you to turn it in with the least amount of spelling errors that you can and with the best grammar that you can. You want to turn in your very best work, right? One of our rules in our class is do your best. So that means you might have to go back through and double check. In fact, it doesn't mean you might have to go back through. It means that you have to reread when you're done. You are going to go back through, check it, make sure that it sounds amazing. You're going to reread it in your mind, make sure that it makes sense, and fix any errors that you have. Okay? All right. Do a great job. I'm proud of you. I will leave this, well, you can go back and rewind this anytime so that you can look at all of this information. You can pause it and go ahead and write the introduction when I talk about the introduction, and then pause it. And then you can watch about the second paragraph. Write your second paragraph while you pause the video. Anything that you need to do to make it easier. Okay? Do a great job. When you're done, you can click Turn In or Submit on your Google Classroom.